Hi, welcome to Exploring the Illusion of Free Will. My name is George Ortega. I'm here with my new co-host, Mike. Mike, glad to see you. I'm glad to have you on the show. This is going to be great. And for our, for this show, we're going to have Nick as our special guest. Okay, he comes in once every 3 months or so. This is episode number 161, Free Will and Elliot Rodger. We're going to basically discuss how what happened with him might not have happened, might have happened differently, how our reaction to him would happen differently. Before we do that, as we do with every show, we're basically going to talk about, describe what we mean by free will, basically give a quick refutation of why we don't have it and why this show is important. So, Nick, why don't you start us off? Mike, when people say they have free will, what do they generally mean?
Generally, they're talking about, for the most part, their conscious mind. And they think that just because it feels like they have choice, that they're actually completely causing all their choices and their preferences, which they're actually not.
All right, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just like the idea that that they're almost like the center of control, as opposed to there being a series of causes and effects that lead to their whole decision-making and action-taking process.
Excellent. Okay, so Nick, you want to describe that in more detail? Why? Describe it in different words. Why we don't have free will?
I'm going to take the Occam's razor approach. Keep it very simple. Free will means you could have done otherwise. That's it. I'm stopping right there.
And so, then I'll go off that. Basically, the reason we couldn't have done otherwise is because there's only one causal chain in the universe. Starting at the Big Bang to the second moment of the universe, the third, the fourth. So it's just, in other words, for us to have done otherwise, there would have to have been a different universe, or something would have to have been different. Okay, and the reason this show is so important is because...
Who are you going to pick on first? All right, Mike.
All right, because if we adopt a no free will mindset, then it definitely alleviates all the games we play of blame and hatred, and a lot of, self-hatred too in the process.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Nick, you have...
What's the question? Why is the show important?
Absolutely.
The show is important because the belief in free will or non-belief in free will touches everything we do.
Yes, and I want to say this. The show is very important because, John Searle, this famous philosopher, says this in very well. He didn't say it directly about the show, but he said, for free will to be understood as an illusion by our world would be a bigger revolution in our thinking than Einstein or Copernicus or Newton or Galileo or Darwin, and that it would alter our whole conception, our entire conception of our relation with the universe. That's how big this is. Okay, and to be honest, we don't know if this is going to play out in 5, 10 years, how long. I mean, I don't know how long it took Darwin to get his ideas accepted, but but we're pioneering this, and this is good. All right, let's go right into the theme: free will and Elliot Rodger. Nick, this is
Okay.
Go ahead, lead.
First of all, Elliot Rodger is the mass murderer kid in California who was upset that he was a virgin his whole life, and he went and shot 6 people and himself. So he's the first mass murderer that I know of that wrote a detailed causal history or reason history of 141 pages. He called it a manifesto, and he's the first mass murderer I know very eloquently wrote detailed journal, basically, of his entire life of why he did what he did. So we're not excusing his actions. I'm just saying, in a way, the universe gave us a gift by him writing. That doesn't mean, obviously, actions have consequences and you cannot go around murdering people, make excuses, but I think it's a good trail of causality of why he did what he did. So I just want to first tell you that I'm going to read something and you guys discuss it. So first of all, he named his manifesto My Twisted World. And he says, and I quote, "All I ever wanted was to fit in and live a happy life amongst humanity, but I was cast out and rejected, forced to endure an existence of loneliness and insignificance, all because the females of the human species were incapable of seeing the value in me. This tragedy did not have to happen. I didn't want things to turn out this way, but humanity forced my hand, and this story will explain why."
Okay.
We're going to do 12 quotes. That happens to be the first quote of the whole thing. But
all right, sounds good.
So either of you guys can go first.
Yeah, so right there you see the paradoxical nature of his statements, because on one hand he's saying that the people around him did have free will, and he's sort of in the victim role, saying that These people are doing this to me, and it could have been otherwise if the world were different. At the same time, he's saying that because it happened this way, I have no choice but to do what I did. So, usually a lot of the time in that victim mindset, you'll attribute free will to everyone around you except yourself.
Exactly, and I'm going to, basically, in a certain sense, he's explaining why he did what he did, but what I want to note is he's explaining it before the fact. In other words, he's kind of excusing himself. He's saying, well, this is what happened to me, this is why I have to do what I have to do, where, the reality is he didn't have to, be influenced by that. I mean, ultimately it wasn't up to him, and we have to acknowledge that. But in other words, I just want he understood that there's these forces that were out of control that molded him, but, a lot of what our show is about is to explain that fine, but that doesn't give us license to do whatever we want. So that's an important
I just want
point.
to touch that. He did say, the reason why I'm bringing this up is I do think his manifesto does prove no free will. Unbeknownst to him, he's someone who believed in free will, but if you look at his writing, he wrote, and I quote, "This tragedy did not have to happen. I didn't want things to turn out this way, but humanity forced my hand." So he's alluding to the illusion of free will. He didn't want things to turn out this way, but he had to.
Right, but as Mike pointed out, he's ascribing free will to humanity.
Well, we'll get to that. All right, let's get to number two. I gotta get. If I had a free will, this would all be okay. Number two. I'll put it over here.
Yeah.
If I could. Okay, number two. Okay, this describes a scene. Where he's waiting for something, his laptop being fixed, and he ends up at a gun shooting range. I walked into the range, rented a handgun. I started to practice shooting at paper targets. As I fired my first few rounds, I felt sick to my stomach. I questioned my whole life, and I looked at the gun in front of me, and I asked myself, quote, "What am I doing here? How could things have led to this? I could not believe my life was actually turning out this way. There I was, practicing shooting with real guns because I had planned to carry out a massacre. Why did things have to be this way? I silently questioned myself as I looked at the handgun I was holding in front of me. I paid my fee and left the range within minutes, feeling as if I was going to be sick. I spent the rest of the waiting period at the Coffee Bean in Oxnard, where I sat by myself feeling absolutely disgusted. My whole world was twisted."
All right, Mike?
So anyway, he's describing surprise of him actually being where he is.
Yes, so in a way, it's like he's going back to what we brushed on before. He's viewing almost his lack of free will, and still attributing it to everyone else. But it's very interesting, the interplay of self-awareness for exactly how he's turning out the way he has, and the bending of his own psychology, while at the same time the lack of self-awareness, or just lack of awareness for understanding that all the perpetrators of all the evils of what happened to him from his perspective was also caused by the same lack of free will, or as you'd call it, causal will.
Exactly. And again, all right, so he mentions that he felt this great disgust by what was happening, but apparently his belief in free will, his belief that other people had free will, led to him having much more hatred toward those people than disgust toward what he was doing. In other words, on the one hand, he's he can't believe this is happening. On the other hand, he believes in free will, so these people deserve it, that he's going to, exact justice or whatever. So, so again, it's this belief in free will overrides the hatred and the hostility that is evoked from his belief in free will, overrides his disgust and amazement.
But if he was so disgusted with what he was doing, why did he just stop?
Because his belief in free will.
No, because he didn't have free will. That's the thing. If you have free will, you would just stop. He knew his world was twisted and he couldn't stop himself.
Well,
you would think acknowledgement would be the first step to self-healing.
But in terms of in other words, he's got two competing motivations. He's got the disgust in what he's doing, but that's not enough to stop him. What's compelling him is that his belief that these people deserve what he's doing and stuff, and that's a free will belief. In other words, if he didn't believe in free will, he would have like felt disgusted, and that would have won out.
On the Manhattan Show, which we're actually on also here, you often mention to myself and other people that life is like a movie. What did you mean by that? Because I think this last passage I read, where he is at the shooting range and says, I can't believe that I'm doing this, we can all relate to the fact that like we're just the observer of and the witness of our own life. Based on that quote, did you understand where that's coming from? Because he's saying, what am I doing here?
Right.
He's like a witness.
I've said often, life is like a movie.
Right.
Life, so Mike, when I say that, what do you take that to mean?
Well, I think for Elliot Rodger, he may have taken that a bit too seriously, in that he saw himself like almost as the broken protagonist of his own life, turning into the antagonist, yet he wanted everyone to view it as if it were some sort of movie that, everybody was going to see, and almost, that he'd generate in a way like the love he never actually experienced while he was alive. So it's like a part of him believed he, somehow through his idea of retribution and seeking out justice. Like, have you ever seen Death of a Salesman?
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a part of him fantasized about what it would be like when he died, and everyone would be crying at his funeral. So, for him, the belief that, he was like the main character of some sort of, of his own fantasy, is one of the many beliefs that led to the tragedies that occurred.
I agree with you. He took this movie metaphor too far. Now, he felt that he was locked into this role, and the role part of the role was like he couldn't track the women, have the kind of life he wanted while he was living, but he was kind of like going to make himself famous. This act was going to give him the acclaim or whatever he desired. The other part of this is by exaggerating this movie metaphor, he's basically taking a fatalist position. Now, we haven't talked much about fatalism. We did a show or two on it. But basically, that's when people say, well, everything is predetermined, so it doesn't matter what I do, it just doesn't matter. And that's the view. He felt he was locked into his fate in a way that he couldn't be fated to change it, And that's the key point we make is fine, everything is determined, fated, destined, but we are often fated, determined, and destined to make the right choices, to overcome our wrongs.
Yeah, exactly, and we have no idea, what the future holds for us still. It's not necessarily fatalistic or, no free will. People often think it's going to be, it's a pessimistic attitude to have, but it's not, because you could still win the lottery or get the promotion or even get the girl, whatever people want nowadays. But
okay, my premise is this manifesto is proving, unbeknownst to Elliot and his father and everybody, that there's no free will. To write about being at a shooting range with surprise that you're there shows that he's just a witness. He doesn't want to be there. It's like everybody can relate to the fact he's like in the third person. He's taking a step back and saying, what am I doing here? I can't believe it's coming to this. I'm planning a massacre. What am I doing here? So I think that proves no free will, because he's like a witness of his own life. Anyway, let's move on. We're running out of time already. All right. So I want this manifesto to be proof that there's no free will. That's why I'm bringing this up. So number 3, unbeknownst to him, because he didn't write this knowing our show and knowing he's promoting, exploring the illusion of free will or no free will. Okay, number 3 is quick and easy. The final solution to triumph over my enemies was to destroy them, to carry out my day of retribution, to exact my ultimate and devastating vengeance against all of the popular young people who never accepted me, and against all women for rejecting me.
That is so classic.
Right, thank
free
you.
will. In other words,
thank you. Now, this is unrehearsed. Yeah. You didn't know what I was going to. He's getting it now. Finally.
If Elliot Rodger understood that nobody had a free will, he wouldn't have been angry at those people. He wouldn't have been seeking revenge at those people.
And he wouldn't have been writing this.
Exactly, because he wouldn't have been doing that. He would have been like, he might have been angry at the universe.
Thank you. George, you're my new hero.
Oh, dude, I mean, come on, this is basic.
But the other two,
this is what the show has been about.
I had to read 141 pages. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So you're right. I mean, this is like a classic example of somebody believing in free will and the harm that it causes by generating hatred and animosity. Mike, what do you think?
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's definitely free will played a part in that. And just how he's blaming everyone. But also there are a lot of other false beliefs mixed in there, such as the belief that there are such things as like objectively cool people, or the belief that you're entitled to whatever you want simply because you exist, or even because you're nice or good looking or whatever it is. So.
Yeah, I want to touch on that because that's important. In other words, Elliot Rodger was not happy. Okay, now under the free will paradigm,
which he had.
Well, not just with what my point is, like, not just he had it, but our entire world has it.
Right, and if there was no free will, this would not have happened. But go ahead.
Basically, under the free will paradigm, we say to ourselves, well, you know, like, as adults, we're going to do whatever we want. We're going to think whatever we want, so like, because we have free will. We can override our learning, you know, our education and all. In other words, if Elliot Rodger would have been taught in grade school, in junior high school, in high school, you know, happiness isn't about, you know, like, you know, getting all these achievements, these things. He didn't understand how to be happy. In other words, like, if we would have started, like, if really, really early, teach him how to be happy as an adult, you know, whatever he didn't have, he would realize that he didn't need it to be as happy as he wanted to be. So it's just it's a failure of our system, of our society, in teaching him these values. And again, like, people who believe in free will say, well, it doesn't matter what you teach them because as adults, you know, we can wipe away all that you know, conditioning with our free will. That's not the case. The way we're taught as kids is the way we become as adults.
Yeah, and also on top of that, you know, that's the nurture component. But I think in cases like these, or even like Adam, what's his name, Lanza, or even, you know, Jim Holmes, like, there's a large nature component too, which is that, you know, a lot of people are born highly sensitive, and, you know, very just very sensitive to the world and the environment around them. And, you know, it might have high-functioning autism or Asperger's, and it's very important that, you know, the parents realize that and take that into consideration, and maybe not, you know, try and get them to fit into a public school system that may not be completely nurturing of that.
Excellent, yeah.
Okay, again, I'm trying to go with Elliot Rodger because he wrote 141 pages, and I'm giving you, like what George saying, classic examples of why the belief in free will is causing homicide and suicide, and why it's such a harmful belief. So let's stick. Okay, so here's number one, another one. I hated all those obnoxious, boisterous men who were able to enjoy pleasurable sex lives with beautiful girls, but I hated the girls even more because they were the ones who chose those men instead of me. It was their choice. They are the ones who deprived me of love and sex.
All right, so
another classic example.
Nick, this is excellent. In other words, like, so I'm going to ask, like, how would it have seemed, let's say he didn't believe in free will.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
You think he would have said that? No. Right. He would have said...
He would have said it's unfortunate the universe has compelled other people to choose women to not want to have sex with me, but it's not up. I don't hate people because I might fear them and not like it, but I don't hate them. It's not up to them.
Exactly.
I'm going to be mad at the universe. I'm not going to go around shooting people who had no malicious intent. They're not out to hurt me, and they're not choosing anybody. They're compelled to choose. They're choosing. They're not freely choosing. You know, so it's the universe choosing. He wouldn't start hating people.
Yeah, that's
you want to talk about that while I switch to the next one with 8 minutes left?
Yeah, that's a perfect example of a combination of his belief in free will and his own entitlement issues, like thinking
But if he gave up the free will, he wouldn't be hating everyone.
Yeah, there'd be that.
Nobody would be choosing people over him. He would say the universe has compelled these people, you know, and it's my life circumstance to not have a girlfriend, but I don't hate everybody who's not choosing.
And he might examine
the
cause
of the environment.
Yeah, he might examine the cause and effect of his own perspective, his own worldview, which is that, you know, his neediness or his entitlement issues actually can get in the way of him actually getting, reaching his goals.
Four more quotes.
Well,
you don't want it to go into another show.
We may not get through them all. That's all right, because we want to get through them in sufficient detail so they understand. They're great quotes.
I got 6 more. But
so here's the thing.
Thank you. I knew George would see the genius in this. I'm saying Elliot Rodger proves no free will.
I know
and if there's no free will, it would be a better world. It wouldn't have happened.
Exactly. So that's my point. All right. So like, if he didn't believe in free will, what he would have also understood is that life brings suffering to us all, and nobody escapes suffering. Things happen to us all, right? So he would have understood that those cheerleaders, those other people, have their problems. The universe is doing stuff to them also, that he's not so unfortunate as he believes, and he would have felt compassion toward those people.
Yes.
When you feel compassion toward people, you don't want to kill them. You don't want to absolutely.
Yes, you're getting it.
I have it.
I knew you were a genius all along.
Though that's also
but this
somewhat
is unrehearsed. He's never heard this before. And neither of you.
Though it's also somewhat nature, since empathy is something that can be, not as potent in people on the spectrum.
Right. Absolutely. And you can't that's a good example, Mike. In other words, in society, in the world, somebody has some kind of a brain deformity, a certain gene. There's a gene called a warrior gene. Certain people have it. They end up in jail and prison much more, more so than people who don't have it. So I mean, you have to have compassion for people. You don't want to allow them to do whatever they want, but still, it's not up to them to have that gene or not.
If Elliot was raised with no free will, we had more compassion, wouldn't be hateful and full of revenge and vengeance to kill everybody. All right, 2 more, okay. I had nothing to live for but revenge. Women must be punished for the crimes of rejecting me, such a magnificent gentleman as myself. These are crimes that cannot go unpunished. The more I thought about all these injustices that were dealt to me, the more eager I became for revenge. It's all I had left. I did not want to die.
Can you believe that? Revenge. I mean, he's driven by revenge. You can't seek revenge. It's impossible to rationally seek revenge against people unless you believe in free will.
He's hitting the nail on the head, man. This is yes. Keep going.
Exactly, and it shines light on our own institutions even, because the whole entire prison system, the entire justice system is very much built off the idea of not just protecting society from the criminals, but punishing them. And so the idea that somehow their suffering balances things out is very much a free will belief that is not conducive towards the type of society we ideally want.
Right. So who creates? And again, I'm saying who just kind of with quotation marks, because we're not going to blame them either, but the sectors of society that create Elliot Rodgers are first the criminal justice system. The Supreme Court in 1978 said yes, we have free will. Clueless decision, completely mindless. Okay, and the media, every time there's a story on somebody like this, they fuel that hatred. They want us all to hate them and all. So what do? They create a world filled with blame and hatred, and eventually, the steam bursts and
evil Elliot Rodger, they call him evil. He's they want to put him in hell forever.
Yeah, it's how wars get started too.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a quote about his father that this could be a little about why he resents his father. If only my failure of a father had made better decisions with his directing career instead of wasting all his money in that stupid documentary.
Yeah, basically, I mean, his father, like all of our fathers, was raised by his
doing
father.
The best they could at the time.
Exactly. He didn't have a free will. We're a product. His father was the product of his environment and his genetics and his. So you can't escape that causality.
So him resenting his father to that degree doesn't make sense, because to say he made bad choices and wasted all the family money, shows that Elliot didn't attribute. He attributed free will to his father for screwing him by losing the family money. The father was trying to make money, did the best decision he could at the time, making this documentary. It happened not to work out, and the family lost money.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how the belief in free will can cause people to just completely linger in the past.
That's right.
And say, this shouldn't have happened, it shouldn't be this way, it should have been some other way.
Should have been otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And with the belief of no free will, or the realization of no free will, you just realize from the Big Bang up till this present moment, it's just... it had to have been this way. It couldn't have been any other way.
You're right. And so what happens is when we don't blame people for what should have happened and could have happened, we're left with like blaming the universe. That's a lot harder. How do you blame the universe? You ask questions like, why is it that way? We certainly don't like a lot of things the universe does. But again, it's much harder to maintain that kind of blame and hatred toward the universe than it is to have it, toward each other and all.
All right, last one with 2 minutes left. This is about his stepmother. Her name's Samaya. I would have to kill Samaya too, but that will be easy. All I will need to do is think about all the hurtful things she said to me in the past as I plunge my knife deep into her neck.
All right, that's sick. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty sick.
All right, and so in terms of how these things happen, for decades there have been thousands of studies documenting how violence in the media, video games, movies, TV filters out into society. I mean, that imagery of stabbing somebody in the neck, that's sick.
Yeah, but all he had to think about all the hurtful things she said to him.
I realize that.
But it wasn't malicious intent, it was the universe saying it.
But that image, that visualization he comes up with, that's Hollywood. That's straight Hollywood. So in other words, if we want to create a better world, we got to get rid of all this violence that fills up people's like his mind, and it fills all our minds. In other words, we may not want to kill people, but it's still stuff we have to deal with.
Because action epics, always portray things as black and white, good versus evil. So, that definitely feeds into it.
I'm saying there's a correlation with the free will belief to how homicidal and suicidal he became. If he didn't believe in free will, he wouldn't have taken his stepmother's words. Yes, they could be slightly hurtful, but not to the degree that he felt so wounded that he would think about the words as he's plunging a knife into her neck as, again, revenge.
I hear you. All right.
So the belief in free will is the problem. Thank you.
I know, but I'm saying we have about 27 seconds left, so you're going to end the show. This is your thing.
Oh, well, these guys didn't know there was I said I wanted to do an Elliot Rodger episode. It was the first time they heard of these quotes. George got it mostly right.
Mike got it too.
The point is, I wanted to show the world that the belief in free will is what caused Elliot Rodger to go nuts. Because if he didn't believe in free will, he would have more compassion and not attribute all these horrible things to other people and himself. Thank you.